Hey everybody, Solomon here. So recently I came across a story of Sophie Long, and it made me, well, it kind of reminded me of the story of James Younger, which kind of bring up this question. In an era where government can legally take your kids and hand them over to their abusers, where is your line, America? Before we unbox that, let's get into some background for both. Let's start with James Younger because his was made known first. During the divorce of Jeff Younger and Anne Gregolis, it's a hard name to pronounce, but her name is Gregolis, it came out that Anne made an insane claim that Jeff's 6-year-old son, James, has said he was a girl named Luna, and Luna has been trans since she was 3. To contextualize this, the divorce proceedings started when Anne and Jeff were having parenting disagreements over Anne's older children, which seems to trickle down to the custody battle between Anne and Jeff. The reason why I mentioned Anne's kids between Jeff's kids is because Jeff had, well, James and his twin brother Jude are from IVF treatment, and Anne didn't produce any eggs, but Jeff did produce a sperm. But Anne did have kids from an older relationship. But that being said, it has been known that divorces, to quote Terrence Popp, are not the most amicable, tends to bring out the worst in people. And with all available evidence points, let me get that straight. All available evidence points that James being Luna stems from Anne wanting to be hip and have a transgender child. There's way too much evidence that points to more malicious attempts than James actually being trans. That being said, the case got so much attention that the governor actually stepped in to tell the family court judge Kim Cook to let James' father have custody. That was October 2019, and as of August 2020, the case went to Judge Mary Brown, who reversed Judge Cook's decision and gave Anne Gregolis sole custody to decide if James is Luna, and that she can enroll him in school as Luna. Now, let's go to Sophie Long. It's a little bit harder to speak on this one because only a psychopath can watch the evidence without feeling rage. But to be laconic, the family court said that Sophie's mom could get majority custody on the threat of Mr. Long, Sophie's dad, going to prison if he intervenes. The kicker is Sophie's confessed to being molested multiple times by her mother's current boyfriend, that her mother, using the term loosely here, watches and threatens the grandmother if the grandmother speaks out. Going by the video that was released by Mr. Long, we can tell plainly from the situation that seems to validate the claims the father makes. Well, Sophie mentions that she would not mind a day with her mom as long as she does not have to spend the night, because every time she's there overnight, her mom's boyfriend would touch her in inappropriate ways. Because of the outcry online, the judge had placed a gag order over the case, and that's where we're at the time of this video. There are some letters down in the description below. I may or may not have it. Depends if the letters are still up. Taking both these cases and 100 others that are like it, it's become obvious that there's an attack on American kids. And who might you ask is the culprit? The enemy is a wretched group that constantly subverting civilization at every move. Leftist envy, or communism. How does the leftist envy correlate to child harm? I should probably explain how communism is the reason that kids are having a bad time first. Well, communism failed to kick off from World War I, so the Frankfurt School came up to the conclusion that evidently people were too comfortable living under a capitalist system to rise up, and thus, as a result, they left to join Columbia University, when an Austrian took over Deutschland and found them a threat to his plans. From there, it was thought that if you attack a culture from the view as oppressor to victim, the communist revolution could take place. One method this was used was the man-woman dynamic that the suffragettes fought to balance. That is what brought us to the different waves of girl power movements, which instead of placing women and men as equals, it placed women as the victims and men as the oppressors, and men need to pay for oppressing women. Which leads us to the girl power theory being taught in university, which brings us to the Duluth model, where these girl power advocates made a theory that was widely adopted in a female-oriented arena. the divorce court, where a man gets twig and berries ripped through the back door. Well, both cases happen through family court, which follows the Duluth model, or domestic abuse intervention projection, which states that, in layman's terms, says that during the divorce procedure, a man is at fault and the woman is always the victim, and thus a woman get whatever she wants while leaving the marriage, including the kids, the house, the savings, and worst of all, the dog. Looking at both these cases from the sense of the Duluth model causes both to make some sense as to why the female family court justice sided with the women. According to the victim oppressor narrative on the left, it only makes sense that the girl power theory would willingly hurt children because the fathers in the situation are oppressing women's rights. It is completely ridiculous that children must suffer because of the doctrine men are always the oppressors of women, but at the end, it makes sense when coming from a communist point of view. Reality be damned when reality does not fit the narrative. It's the same concept on the Kulak's unalivement at the hands of Stalin. With what's going on, it brings me back to the opening question. Where is your line, America? At what point do you stand up and say no to this collectivist attack on the nation's children? I'm explicitly not calling people to violence, but the leftist elite has forgotten that the Second Amendment exists for foreign and domestic enemies, and seeing as they are willing to destroy our kids, this seems to be a domestic case. Once again, not calling for violence, just saying what needs to be said. That is all for today. Solo over and out.